Welcome to the Nonprofit Voice, which is brought to you by Nonprofit Pro, the go-to resource for nonprofit management and strategy. In each episode, we'll sit down with nonprofit executives, consultants, and technology partners to learn more about the latest tactics, strategies, and trends in the nonprofit sector. As always, you can download all Nonprofit Voice episodes on Apple, Google, and Spotify. To be the first to know of new episode releases, follow us on social media and subscribe to our e-newsletter.
All right, welcome back, everyone. It's been a minute since I've done one of these. Mark Becker, I'm the founding partner of Cathexis Partners, here today to chat with Shannon. Shannon, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and your organization?
Sure. I'm Shannon McCracken. I'm president and CEO of the Nonprofit Alliance, or TNPA. We are a national infrastructure organization serving nonprofits and their related partners.
And you all have been around for quite a while as an organization, right?
Well, we're 7 years old. So some
Okay.
days it feels like we're really young, and some days it feels like we've been doing this for a long, long time.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen you and the group out there and your name out there a lot. I know what you do is really important to the industry, so thank you for what you're doing. So let's go ahead and jump right in. One of the things everybody's talking about these days is data privacy, right? I think the nonprofit space, with leaders like yourselves and fundraising.ai and different groups, are really kind of leading the cause in ethical and moral use of AI. But what can nonprofits expect from the nonprofit industry and from Congress when it comes to what's going on with data privacy?
Yeah, and Mark, it's interesting the whole conversation, a few years ago when we were talking about data privacy and it really got interwoven with cybersecurity as a key issue in legislation and what made it a hot topic and why it would get picked up. And now of course it's much more about AI and AI being a forcing factor to move data privacy legislation along, or sometimes pushing down data privacy as a priority because AI comes higher. We're seeing that right now in Congress where there's a data privacy, there's bill language being developed, but it is delayed both because of the government shutdown at the end of last calendar year, but also because they're focused on some other priorities like children's safety and AI and children's safety online. So a lot, of course, data touches everything and therefore needs to be understood and regulated. As you mentioned, fundraising AI and other groups across the sector are doing great work to build out frameworks, and will probably always be critically important, even when there is legislation in place that's more stable and understood. Even when there are regulations and rulemaking that we all understand, because the technology is moving so quickly, right? And so we have to take this responsibility of some self-regulation and that accountability to protect our reputation, to protect our work, and to protect the people in the communities that we serve. So the sector always has to have leading voices on that. On the legislative side, not much, shouldn't say there wasn't much activity last year, not no new state laws that really affect nonprofits and data privacy passed last year. So we still have the 19-ish out there. Seven of them do not exempt nonprofits. So we have that patchwork quilt. Of course, there's always conversation at the state level about data privacy laws. And so that will continue to bubble up. And there's a House working group, all Republicans, but they are working on that bill language that I mentioned, and including TNPA and including other voices of other industries, and really trying to move this forward in this Congress. So fingers crossed we can see some of that happen and start to preempt the state by state.
Yeah, there's AI is moving so fast and it's impossible for anybody to keep up with it, much less but just getting some basic frameworks in there would be terrific. What do you think? What do you see as the real impact on nonprofits with all the kind of patchwork of state laws or none, and then what else is going on, and internationally, for that matter as well? What do you see as the impact to
Yeah,
nonprofits?
well, it's so at TNPA we call it our data brain trust. We have a group of practitioners from data companies and from nonprofits and legal counsel, and that we bring together periodically to review legislation or review issues that are out there and help advise us on some of the policies and positions that we're taking, specific bill language, et cetera. And we were just with that group last week and talking about this very question of what has the impact been. Okay, so we now have 19 state laws. It's TNPA formed in 2018, right in the midst of the California work on their what ultimately became their privacy law. What has the effect been? And there were a couple interesting things that bubbled up from that. First of all, we're trying to get our arms around what is the cost to nonprofits from all of this data privacy legislation, specifically the cost of compliance, because our point on this always is, yes, we love nonprofit exemptions. We appreciate when nonprofits are exempted from the precise burden of compliance with state privacy laws. And when our data partners are not exempted, those costs are still being incurred. And there's a downriver effect, right? Those costs have to be covered, and we're presuming that they're being passed on to clients. And so we were probing some of that assumption and that question with the data brain trust. And what we heard back was that most, at least of the voices represented in the room, most of those costs have not to this point been pushed down to nonprofit clients, that the data companies have really done their best to absorb these costs as a cost of doing business,
Interesting.
and tried to buffer nonprofit clients from that. That's sort of reaching its breaking point. Cost of everything has gone up, and some of those costs are going to start to break through, right? But at this point, it's and again, we're trying to get our arms around this, but it's hard to point to specific costs nonprofits have incurred above and beyond because their data partners and data processors and data brokers are needing to comply with these costly laws, including direct costs of registering in certain states, as well as the internal process requirements and changes. So the costs are out there, but maybe not being felt by nonprofits, which might also make nonprofits complacent's not the right word, but feel like there isn't as big a hit that it's been delayed. So a little bit of sluggishness on that impact felt.
Yeah.
The other thing that came up that I really hadn't focused on, but it was like this light switch in my brain that I should have been focused on sooner, was that we're always talking about in other conversations the decline in the number of donors and the number of donors when you think of acquisition lists, for example, the number of under $100 donors, active donors who are available on an acquisition list. That is declining in the direct marketing world and declining pretty steadily. And somebody on the call pointed out that there are a number of list owners, like think subscriber buyer lists, who have just pulled lists off the market or pulled lists from certain states off the market preemptively because of the state laws, either the cost to comply or the cost of, for example, frivolous lawsuits. There was a series of those coming out of New Jersey last year that really affected the sector and affected mailers. And some of those mailers have just said, hey, we're not even going to tempt fate here. Let's just pull those names. Well, that means there are that many fewer likely households and individuals who are generous, who are direct marketing responsive, who simply aren't available anymore. And then it pushes nonprofits into that place of, over soliciting, or everybody's sort of talking to the same smaller pool of donors and all the challenges that come from that. So it's not certainly the only factor or probably the biggest factor in that declining giving, but it's yet one more lever, right? And it's not about individuals who are exercising their rights for data privacy or consumer privacy. It's this preemptive move to just remove.
How innocent we were just 4 years ago thinking about AI and, hey,
Yes.
write out this letter for me or review this letter, and that's still a great use case. But yeah, it's great that there's actual use cases. Like, AI can do all these things. Okay,
Mhm.
show me.
Yeah, and the what's not is important in that too. And it's iteration, and there are some great stories out there about agentic AI and nonprofits. There's some horror stories out there about that. We're at that early stage of the learning curve, and nonprofits and nonprofit conferences have always been great about people getting up at the front of the room and saying, "Hey, here's something that's working for us, so everybody should copy it." There's lots of that. And also, here's what's not working. Like,
Right.
this went terribly wrong. Learn from my mistake. Don't be a me. Yeah. So
Exactly. Yeah, it's totally okay to fail, and we're all here for it. And yeah, bring a lunch and share what worked and what didn't. What are you seeing and what are you hearing as far as from the C suites as far as adoption of technology and training staff and staff readiness and
yeah.
what are you hearing in that space?
Yeah. And look, there are budget concerns and all the things but that's not new. It's just a different flavor of that. I think it feels like nonprofits and leadership at nonprofits, either because they don't want to be left behind, they want to be known as innovators, or they just see opportunity. There is this leaning into prioritizing investment in technology and some untested technology, as we were just saying, that it doesn't have to all be like, okay, what's the big CRM, or what is the massive investment that we're going to make over the next 3 years and that migration. And this is like, let's test things, let's try things on the fundraising side, on the finance side, on the programmatic side. And a greater comfort level with that experimentation, because again, it's also new, so you can't just look and see what everybody else has been doing. And there's I think we're moving away from that, some of that reluctance in the first couple years, where organizations were sitting back and saying, okay, we'll let the well-resourced organizations, or those with a little more risk tolerance, we'll let them go figure it out and then we'll copy. Now it's like there are really some easier, lower entry points, and everybody's finding their space where they fit to try something new.
I think that's a great point that you hit on is yeah, first of all, testing and failing is okay. And now it's cheaper, less expensive, less of a lift to test things out, right? Everything from, just different AI tools making it easier to test things, but also subscription models are changing. Those 3-year
Mhm.
contracts are
Yeah.
less
Yeah.
prevalent than they used to be. It's kind of pay as you go or test it out for try us. They really want you to give it a taste and get addicted to it and sign up from there. But even then, you don't have to do long-term commitments.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, so there's some safety in that, and it's turned everybody into a technologist, which the
Right.
IT teams may not they may have their days that they wish they could put that horse back in the barn, but, yes, like, everybody in every role is seeing and having the opportunity to try, either officially or maybe, unofficially, but to try some new tools, or, learn what's working and bring that to the table. So yes, that brings some challenges, but certainly is opportunity as well.
Really appreciate your time and great chatting with you.
You as well. Thank you.
All right, take care.
You too.
Thanks for listening. Listen to more episodes at nonprofitpro.com as well as on Apple, Google, and Spotify.